Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences. Demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Application Security Weekly. This is the news for the week of August 27th. Got a couple of interesting things in here. First up, I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about, of course, the popular game Fortnite for those that are, players of the game. Paul, did you happen to catch a couple of these articles? I know that this looked pretty bad when it came to the fact that, they announced, hey, we're not going to be using Google Play Store to deliver our application. And lo and behold, it has vulnerabilities in it.
I really think Google set out to just shame them in this case, to be like, oh, you don't want to use our Play Store, huh? So we're just going to find vulnerabilities in your app, and you should really use the Play Store, because Google stands to make some money if they put Fortnite in the Play Store, right? I would assume they take a percentage of your sales, right? Being in the Play Store, that's like how 30%. The model worked. Yeah. So obviously they're trying to skirt that, but they did not benefit from any of the protections they have in the Play Store, where I'm assuming there's some automated processes that look for various things in your code. Vulnerabilities likely being one of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in this case, basically what it was is the installer itself made calls out that would allow for a malicious attacker to potentially hijack that and install, malicious software on the endpoint device, which, by the way, I'm sure the Play Store is probably checking for, which is why they charge you for, anything that's purchased as a result of the apps through the Play Store. So yeah, it probably did feel a little bit like, a slap in the face to the folks at Fortnite. In fact, the folks at Fortnite had a number of sharp words for Google around the fact that they disclosed this right after the patch came about. But in my mind, it's like, that's why the Play Store exists, and it's what it's supposed to do for you. So yeah, needless to say, it is funny to me because there's a 90-day disclosure timeline on any bug that Google reports, and the wording itself says, after 90 days elapse or a patch has been made broadly available, the bug report, including comments and attachments, become visible to the public.
Well,
so
here's I think the bigger issue with that is not just, sorry to interrupt you, Keith, but
that's okay.
I would just, the thought I had was, if I install the APK locally, that doesn't get auto-updated like my apps do that I download from the Play Store, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And so, yeah, that is a huge problem.
Right.
And
so,
the other side of it is this.
They make a patch available, but no one's automatically installing it. And if their disclosure is right after the patch is released, then, chaos can ensue because it's not auto-updating.
Another part of being part of the Play Store, right? Like the whole point of being part of the Play Store is part of that auto update. And so the interesting thing to me about the whole situation was basically they did it because they didn't want to pay Google for all that usage, for anything that was bought through the App Store inside of the game. Because I think that's how Google makes its money, is any pay as you go apps where it's like, okay, I can buy these extra little things from the App Store inside of the game, gets paid to Google as a percentage. I think it's like 30%. It might not be that high, but it's large enough that they decided not to do it. The other problem, though, Paul, is that to install this without installing it through the Play Store, you got to turn off a bunch of protections to your system. Now, especially if you need to go do an update, guess what? People probably aren't turning back on those protections anyway. But can you imagine the pain from the user standpoint of having to go turn those all off again, do the update, turn them back on again every single time something like this comes out?
So because there was fake Fortnite distribution sites because they decided not to use the Play Store, and if you're installing Fortnite, you have to disable third-party application protections, right? There's like that setting in Android that says, yes, basically let me install APKs outside of the Play Store, and people turn that off, and then God forbid you turn on the ADB debugger after that. That basically means without authentication, people can dump any application they want on the system.
Yep, exactly. And in fact, you've hit on the next point. So that was story number 200, bugs, breaches, and more. And story number 200, if you build it, they will come, is exactly the problem you're describing, Paul. In fact, it was something like right around the time that they announced it, if not like a week before they announced that they were going to do this, separate from the Play Store, that Wired did a whole article on the fact that, hey, by the way, there are malicious Fortnite apps out there already. Congratulations. Yep. So that happened, I think, a week before they even announced that they were going to be doing it, via the Fortnite, website, Epic Games site, I should say. So they have Epic Games is the maker of Fortnite. And so, yeah, I mean, basically everybody predicted this, and exactly the worst sort of things came about as a result. And guess what? People's phones are probably getting owned, which isn't great. And I'm sure Fortnite is like, hey, it's not our fault. The user should be more responsible. Is probably what they're thinking about this. Which, in my mind, in this day and age, come on, really, like we can be better than this, and we should be. It comes at a cost, but I think Fortnite or Epic Games was valued at something like a couple $2 billion or something like that recently, and it's mostly privately held. So it's not like they need more money. In fact, they probably don't have a huge security team, and if they do, I'm sure that we'd be happy to talk to someone from the security team at Fortnite or at Epic Games. Email us, psw@securityweekly.com. I'd be interested to know what they're doing and how they missed this. But with that being said, Paul,
I thought that
what other stories did you want to talk about?
Yeah, I thought that the PHP vulnerability that exposed WordPress sites, which I read is not just WordPress sites, it traces back to the way that PHP handles unserialized data. What's interesting is, and we actually interviewed Stefan Esser, it says unserialization of attacker-controlled data is a known class of vulnerability that is liable to lead to execution of malicious code. The German security researcher Stefan Esser first documented this class of flaw 10 years ago. That's kind of interesting, I thought. Now, I also read this as a privilege escalation bug, not a remote code execution vulnerability, so there is some limiting factors there.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was, basically it's PHP does deserialization badly, ultimately affects WordPress. Now, the other side of it is that in this case, there was a chain of bugs that needed to be leveraged to actually make use of this. So to that end, basically what ended up happening was you need to get an XML, external entities execution, that leads to server-side request forgery that allows you to make use of the malicious deserialization to then do all these things. Now, in my mind, it's like, okay, yes, this is bad for WordPress, specifically because it's on PHP, and let's face it, XXE and server-side request forgery is probably fairly prevalent depending on version of WordPress you're using or plugins that you're using that make it possible. But by the time you have XXE and then server-side request forgery, you're already in a bad place, like regardless of the fact that you're using PHP. Maybe PHP made it easier, but even still, it's bad. It's a bad place to be. So yeah, I was interested in this because I think that WordPress being everywhere is an interesting situation because it is like what 10,000 sites, maybe more. It runs some large percentage of the internet, basically, or blogs that are out there.
Yeah, it's millions of sites, result, like 10% of the sites go, something like that. Yeah, and it uses the FAR, the PHAR stream wrapper, which I have never seen before.
Yes,
I don't know if you have.
Neither have I.
Okay, I had never seen that before.
Honestly, thankfully, I've avoided writing PHP ever, and I probably will continue to avoid it. But yeah, it's basically one of the PDF generation libraries as well. So TCPDF makes use of this, it seems like. So there was actually a couple of other things beyond just WordPress that are actually vulnerable here.
Sure.
And what I found interesting about this as well is it was actually kind of dual reported close to the same time. So the report that we're citing here under, let's see, this is story number 3 under bugs, breaches, and more. That actually was presented at B-Sides Manchester, whereas a talk on the very same problem was kind of disclosed as something that was found, I think, at DEF CON like the week before, or a few days before. So basically, this is a situation of vulnerability collision being found and reported, and in some cases still is yet to be patched. So yeah, there's that. People should probably get to the patchery, especially if they're using WordPress. Paul, you're using WordPress, but you actually seem to be patching it pretty regularly and working on a number of things to make it more secure.
Yeah,
How's that going for you?
I've outsourced all of my WordPress sites because I don't want to deal with the security and patching. So I hope that my hosting provider has applied fixes here, which I mean,
You might not even be vulnerable.
Could not even be vulnerable because there's probably the other vulnerabilities that have to exist leading up to this likely don't exist. But I've essentially outsourced that because I want to move on to other things other than trying to secure and harden WordPress and spend my time on other topics that I can talk about on the shows. So that's one reason why we've outsourced it. So.
Well, and the other side of it is this, right? So part of this relating to the vulnerability itself is you would end up using like a booby-trapped file, usually an image file, that would allow you to get through some of this deserialization vulnerabilities, right? And so if you have authors that you trust, then you're probably okay. But if you have a public blog that you allow comments on and you allow like uploads to, like, so maybe images, avatars, etc., that's probably more of a problem. I think that you're probably okay in this case, Paul, just given the functionality of the site itself and the nature of it. But yeah, again, it's one of those situations that there's enough of it, whereas the speakers at Black Hat and at B-Sides Manchester basically said, look, this is bad, and we should all feel bad because it's PHP.
Yeah, I've got ideas on how to manage this. I'm not really ready to share them because I don't know if it's actually possible. But given the way that is particularly, I'd say hosting providers in general allow you to work with images or snapshots in multiple environments of your website, I've got some ideas on how to apply some security. I don't know if they're feasible, but I'll definitely be sharing them on this show as I learn more.
Sweet. I look forward to that. Speaking of bad languages, by the way, I don't know if you caught this. I added this kind of late, but story number one under If You Build It, They Will Come. Apparently, Oracle's like, hey, guess what? We just recently had an emergency in a major Java library. So why don't we just start charging people for updates to SE 8 and 9 starting in January of next year before, most people have a chance to migrate so that they can pay us for all those critical security vulnerabilities that are coming out in the core language of Java, which, by the way, I don't know if you ever look at the Java notes, but there seems to be a lot of vulnerabilities in there almost every time I see an update. So talk about insult to injury. I saw this come through and I was like, really? Like suddenly it's like, okay, Java SE 8 and Java SE 9 must pay for patching 4 months from now. Good luck.
And is there weren't there talks of Oracle getting rid of the free version of Java? Is that already happened?
Yeah, as far as I understand, I think it's already in the works, right? I think that the latest version of Java is actually paid, right? So as far as I understand, it seems like they're basically going to the paid model. I'm hoping that Java ends up going the way of PHP and Flash and just kind of dies a slow and horrible death.
It's going to be a really slow death, though. There's a lot of adoption of Java. I mean, in terms of asking people to pay, I think that's a double-edged sword. I think one, on the good side, right? Let's look at the positive aspect. If we know that it's enterprise Java we're worried about securing, those organizations are going to pay and hopefully apply updates because they're paying for them, right? And kind of commercialize that and be able to take control of the code and serve its paying customers so that they have the best experience and can update to the latest versions of code more easily, one would like to think. However, I can see a lot of enterprises going, yeah, no, I'm not paying for that, right? And now if you're not paying, you're not getting updates, so it could leave a lot of people who don't really identify with the risk to not update Java and use whatever the latest available free versions were.
So small and medium businesses are going to suffer the worst for this, right? Because they're not going to pay for the updates because they just don't have the funds set aside to start doing that. And even the large enterprise, I think Amazon, in a recent show that we covered, they are actually in the process of moving away from like all of Oracle's databases and some of their cloud stuff, et cetera. So this might be a preempting. And I imagine that, because I remembered Oracle won a case against Google where Google was fined some large sum of money because of their use of Java to build Android, right? So in my mind, the other edge to this sword is the fact that, first of all, Oracle is making you pay for the updates. And that kind of builds a conflict of interest here because, hey, I don't have to write as good code as I should because I'm going to make people forced to update on revision. And by the way, you're going to have to pay for that.
Yeah.
So if you don't pay for it, then you're just going to get our bad, crappy code and we're just going to leave you with it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't like this at all. I think that the timeline is really terrible. I think that they're doing a disservice to their customers, and I really, really hope that their customers look somewhere else, like, I don't know, Golang or Ruby or something that is going to hopefully allow them to find, a set of developers that have the skill sets they need that can allow them to slowly migrate away from Java because I don't know. It depends on the charges itself. Actually, if you go and look at the price structure or the breakdown, looked pretty big to me because it was like by named user. And so if you're a really large enterprise, that's going to cost you a ton of money, like a lot of money. And yeah, it's just not scalable in my mind, especially for people that weren't planning on this as part of their budget for next year.
My question is, so with Golang, does it have like a server-side component that can allow you to use it as part of your web framework?
Yeah, so they're actually in the process of building that now. So there's like the WebAssembly and Go are kind of two things that are really taking off. In fact, I was reading an article, and I didn't cite it in this week's show notes, but I might do it in next week's show notes, where Go and the advent of WebAssembly is actually being seen as something that might do away wholesale with JavaScript. Because of the way that you can make dynamic web applications that are effectively rendered server side fast enough for the user to experience it in a way that it doesn't have to be pushed out to their system to actually do it. So to that end, your limitation ends up being your bandwidth speed because Go is fast enough to actually be able to do a lot of the things that JavaScript would otherwise be used for, right? So
that's interesting.
The way I think of Go, and it's kind of funny, right? As a language, I haven't played with it as of yet, but it's kind of like Python and C or C++ like had a child, and that's Go. And from everyone I talked to, James Wickett and others that have written in Go, it's a very enjoyable language to write in, and it's extremely performant. Like that's the other side of it, right? So if suddenly you could do server-side rendering so fast that you're only limited by bandwidth to actually deliver the feature set or the functionality on the endpoint, you're actually in a really good spot in my mind. So yeah, speaking of language problems, though, one thing that I did want to point out as well as story number 4 under bugs, breaches, and more is the Node.js security release that just happened here in August, which in my mind is probably a result of some of the ways that they do math inside of Node.js. I remember, I think it was either last year, possibly 2 years ago, that it was found in Node.js that they were trying to push 64-bit floats or 64-bit ints into 53 bits. So they were losing precision. And at one point on this show, I remember citing specifically that I was concerned about the fact that if you're losing precision, you're going to have problems with cryptography, among other things, because of the math associated with it. And lo and behold, 2018, there's some CVEs here. So CVE 2018-0732, they have a client denial of service due to large Diffie-Hellman parameters. Here we go, right? Like this is the exact problem that I was thinking would be the case. And it seems to be on any 6, 8, or 10. So the 2 long-term supports and the current version are all vulnerable to this. So yeah, I don't know. It seems to me it's like someone decided, hey, let's just be less precise with our large numbers, and suddenly it's causing problems for them. Who'd have thought? I don't know. Were there any other vulnerabilities in this article, Paul, that maybe stood out to you? I know that there was a couple for me, but I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to talk about any that interested you.
No, I think I've covered the ones that are other than Windows 95 running in Electron. I thought that was kind of weird and interesting.
Let's jump into learning and tools. So it was number 4 under learning and tools. Someone decided to get a fully running version of Windows 95 that could in fact play Doom running an Electron that you can use on like Mac OS, Windows if you wanted to, and Linux. This was a little bit crazy to me, and in the process of this, I learned about a project called V86. So V86 is a project also on GitHub. It's github.com/copy/V86 that allows you to do emulation of x86 architecture in Electron. So as a result, you can do Windows 98, Windows 95, Linux, FreeDOS, Windows 1.01, pretty much anything you want that runs on x86 architecture, which I thought that like in Electron, that's pretty cool in my mind. And then the person that wrote this, they're like, yes, I'm sorry. The code isn't that great. This was a joke project. I said it couldn't be done, and then I did it, and it turns out it can be done. So yeah, that was kind of funny. But hey, I mean, if you're looking for projects to work on, and you want to expand your skill set, what better way than to emulate Windows 95 in Electron, right?
That's crazy.
So that was kind of funny.
So in Electron,
the other one that
I'm sorry, in Electron, they're emulating the x86 instruction set in JavaScript.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive.
And now it makes me wonder how performant it is, right?
Yeah.
Compared to
probably pretty slow.
Compared to Windows 95, is it faster than, the same? Does it use more resources than were available at the time of Windows 95, or the same? Probably more is my guess, given that it's Electron. But it would be funny to see someone do like actual performance tests, because there was a white paper, or at least I think it was like actually a collegiate paper that someone had written, saying that if you were able to write JavaScript as the entire code base for an operating system, it would actually be something like 12% more performant than C-based operating system development, given that you had like the right interpreters, etc., right? And so it'd be funny to see if someone actually tested this in Electron to say, here's an operating system that is emulated entirely in JavaScript. Is it more performant than, the same as, or worse than the actual operating system itself? So who knows, right? Now people get to put that to the test. The other one under learning and tools that I thought would be interesting for our listeners, though, is Burp Suite came out with a new version. 2.0 is their current beta. They've got a number of new features in there, such as a new crawler, which I thought was really nice, automatic session handling, multi-scan phases, dynamic JavaScript analyzer, which, by the way, is also really awesome because most sites are written in JavaScript these days, as well as live scanning capabilities, etc. This was cool to me. It's funny. I've actually let my Burp Suite Pro Enterprise license, or Burp Suite Pro license, drop off, only because I was waiting to see what happened with this, and I think I'm gonna have to go renew at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like really a lot of the updates are with the crawler and the scanner, which is, of course, in today's age of applications, if you're maintaining a crawler and a scanner, like, you're writing a lot of code, like you're updating a lot of code, because so much stuff has changed, and that was always one of the most difficult phases of automatic and dynamic web app testing, was doing the crawling. A lot of technology goes into that, a lot of engineering. And then to actually do the scanning, and they list out automatic session handling, consolidation of site-wide passive issues. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here that you got to put a lot of engineering into that crawling and scanning, and it looks like they've done that. So I'm curious to test it and see.
So the irony is, it's written in Java, which I thought was kind of funny. The whole Burp Suite has always been written in Java. And the other side of it that I thought was funny is there's no dark theme, and I'm really upset about that. I'd like a dark UI for Burp Suite Pro, so that when I run this at night, I don't hurt my eyes. I
agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah.
It's the little things, right? Like, all I want is a dark theme. Like, if I could get a dark theme Burp Suite Pro, I'd be super happy. Like the crawler, the scanner, yes, I need those things, but man, do my eyes ever need the dark theme right now, whenever I've used it at night. So one other project I did want to quickly highlight as well is there was a WebSocket fuzzer, which I thought was really neat, because so many people complain about WebSocket fuzzing inside of Burp Suite Pro, of all things, right? Like, it has the ability to read WebSocket, request responses, but it's never been very good at it. And it's one of the things that they say that they're working on with this 2.0 beta in Burp Suite Pro. But someone released an actual open source WebSocket fuzzer that has two files, both a Python send message as well as like a server that can be...
Andre Riancho is the author. He was W3AF, was a web scanning framework.
Was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did someone buy that? What happened to that project? Did a vendor acquire that project? I don't remember what happened to it.
I do not recall. It's still, W3IF is still open source and available. Actually, if you go to his GitHub page, it's still there.
Okay.
I don't know that he's doing as much development on it now as he had in the past. Also written in Java, by the way, I believe. But in this case, it was one of those it was one of those projects. Actually, no, excuse me. Most of this is Python, believe it or not. So I take that back. But yeah, it's still around as far as I know. It looks like there's some active development on it. I mean, if you look at some of the pushes here, you've got a Docker container, you've got tools in W3AF had commits like 5 days ago as of this actual podcast. So yeah, it looks like it's still under active development, and Andres Riancho did even more, which is awesome because WebSocket fuzzing is not easy, and now he's open sourced it. So if you use WebSockets, there you go. Like, all right, now you have a tool.
Yeah, he's based out of Argentina, has his own consulting company, and we should probably have him back on the show. Oh, and he worked at Rapid7 for a couple of years. Okay, that's where it's all coming together. Yeah,
there you go.
He would be a great guest for the show.
Yeah,
I agree. He's been on Paul Security Weekly like way back in the day, so he's definitely due to come on this show for sure. Yeah,
yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. One or two more articles I wanted to cover. The first is actually, and you might have met him at InfoSec World this past year, Paul. So my friend at Microsoft, Ray Bango, wrote a nice article on his journey into InfoSec.
I saw him at DEF CON too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Ray's a great guy. I mean, if you've ever met him in person, he's just super friendly, really eager to learn, really eager to talk to you about the things that you're doing and you're working on and trying to learn new things. And so he's written up a really nice article on, as a developer. I mean, he worked on a number of development projects at Microsoft and in other locations as well. And so this is his actual like foray into InfoSec. And if you're a developer listening to the show, this story, which is story number 1 under Food for Thought, go read it, because Ray is one of those people that if you reach out to him on Twitter, I guarantee you he's likely to give you a response or at least give you some pointers to go in the right direction.
Yeah,
I just want to
thank Ray. He was one of the individuals at Microsoft that helped us find the right other people at Microsoft that helped us get the interview with what's his name that did Azure Sphere, Galen Hunt. Yep. Thank you. Yes. So yeah. No, Ray is an excellent dude. He's always willing to help out whenever you reach out to him. He's actually going to be at DerbyCon this year. I think I'm going to grab dinner with him, and my sensei Jason Haddix as well is going to be there. So nice. If you see him around, or if you see me around and you want me to point out Ray to you, I'm happy to make introductions because he is such a great dude. Also, I wanted to talk just very quickly about the fact that Burp Suite Pro is releasing an Enterprise Edition. I thought that was weird. They haven't come out with any pricing yet on this, but it looks like, hey, install Burp agents everywhere, or have a centralized Burp Suite Pro, kind of platform that you use, and then you can actually automate scanning. This was interesting to me because, in my experience, the auto scanner has not been great with Burp Suite Pro. It's good. I mean, it's good for like pseudo manual effort, but it's not been to the level of auto scanning. What did you think of this, Paul? Well, so this is the first I'm hearing of it. What I think is interesting and represents the future of web application and dynamic scanning is the ability to put an agent on the system and glean information from that agent that gives your scanner a lot of intelligence, so that it doesn't have to work so hard to map the application. And like I said, crawling is one of the most difficult things. I think this represents the future. I've yet to see anyone really pull it off and make a big push in the market to identify this particular solution as like something you should be doing. Now, we did meet with Rapid7 and Dan Kirkendall, Kirkendall, I always say his name wrong, Dan, from Rapid7, and we were talking about just this because Rapid7 has an agent, it's an all-encompassing agent, and he is working on that. It's interesting to see Burp Suite kind of follow in those footsteps. Acunetics had some agent-based stuff back in the day. I'm not sure if they still do today, but they were playing around with it, and specifically they had a PHP agent that they played around with, which I thought was interesting. All of these were, and still are today, I feel very conceptual, but I think the agent or some kind of hook that works in conjunction with your dynamic scanner is a very, very important relationship that I think someday someone's going to get right and make a big push into the market. You're probably going to see others follow. And so I like that, Burp Suite is going here.
Yeah, at the very least, I'm definitely going to try and check it out. So I will report back to let you know my experience. I've always been somewhat skeptical on the Burp scanner. I mean, it's good for like low level stuff, but again, that's also the old scanner. This might be part of their new scanner that they rebuilt for the new Burp Suite Pro 2.0. Could be leveraging some of this, or maybe what they did is they built the enterprise scanner and then they tampered down on some of the functionality for enterprise users, right? So it's possible they're feature toggling there as well, which would be interesting. Either way, I plan to check it out, so I'll let you know.
Sweet.
Lastly, I did want to just point out story number 4 under Food for Thought is, of course, our weekly commit strip article. I thought that this one was hilarious, especially because the sysadmin seems to have a really keen sense of when there's memory leaks on systems. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us this week for another episode of Application Security Weekly. Remember to git commit and stay classy.